And I would say that you do have the power to change your health and optimize your health so that you can actually feel freaking fantastic. You can feel mahan or great. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they're wrong, because you can get there.
All right, hello everyone, new and returning guests. Welcome to the What You Don't Hear podcast. This is a life podcast. It's a bit of a personal journal as I sit down with a guest and chat about everything that makes them them in an effort to shed light on the sides of stories that nobody often gets to hear. I am your host. My name is Ross Theisen. I am a director, a brand builder. I'm a talker. I am simply a maker of many things, more than I probably should do, to be honest. But most importantly for this, I am a podcaster, and I bring you these conversations every other Monday for free $99. They, of course, can be found on iTunes and Spotify by subscribing on those platforms. Most recently, I've got to make sure I tell you and remind you for no other reason than the amount of extra energy it takes for me to film these things. And I sure would love for people to see them, that you can now watch all of these new episodes over on YouTube. That's at youtube.com/Ross Theisen. I'm just tossing them all up on my personal channel. So if you're a person who likes to watch rather than just listen, you can find each new episode there. So, you know what you're listening to. You know who I am now. I know you're saying, Ross, if I haven't already just skipped past this entire section, I just want you to get to the point, and I will. So, my episode this week is honestly an amazing conversation start to finish, and I almost can't put into words how valuable I think this episode is. So I sat down and got to know Dr. Hanisha Patel. She is a naturopathic doctor, and man, did she drop some knowledge in this conversation. We talk all about what she does, and seriously, I'm not even going to spoil more of it up front here, because there's so much just good health talk in this one, and stuff that I can't even do justice by vaguely explaining here at the open. So I 100% guarantee that you are going to learn something in this conversation. So let's just get to it without further ado, and me putting it off any longer. Let's just get into it. Here is episode 27 in my conversation with Dr. Hanisha Patel. You ready to dive in?
I'm ready.
You want to make this happen?
Let's do it.
Hanisha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am both, to be completely transparent with you, I am both super excited, but also very nervous.
Oh, yeah? Why
I'm
is that?
nervous because I feel like there is so much that it's both nervous and excitement, because there's so much I don't know about the field that you're a professional in, but it's also exciting because I'm like, okay, cool, it's time to learn. It's time to learn so many things. So honestly, I just want to toss it over to you. Explain to me what you do.
Yes, definitely. And it's so funny because I end up telling my patients this all the time, that I may overwhelm you, and hopefully it's in a good way.
Yes.
But there's likely going to be some overwhelm because there's so much to learn, and even I barely, I feel like I barely scratched the surface of my own knowledge, let alone what I've learned in teaching that to other people. So a little bit about what I do. So I'm a naturopathic doctor, and so naturopathic medicine is a very distinct primary healthcare profession where we combine the rigors of modern science with the wisdom of nature. So kind of taking those ancient medicines, like the indigenous medicines, Eastern medicines, all of that, combining it with the more conventional medicines and bringing it all together and finding where there's a time and a place for each of those. And that's completely simplifying what naturopathic medicine is. I can definitely go into more detail if you'd like, but
honestly, one of my first questions is how did you find your way into that? Was it another form of the health field and then you dove deeper into this, or was it immediate dive into this stuff?
I definitely had not heard about naturopathic medicine until after my undergraduate career. So I was planning on going the conventional medical route. And when I was going that route. I was getting my degree in pharmaceutical sciences. I went to The Ohio State University, getting my degree in pharmaceutical sciences. And as I was studying these pharmaceuticals, I would learn about the side effects of these medications, and then learn the medications needed for those side effects, and then the medications needed for those side effects, right? And so we were just constantly learning about this vicious cycle. And then it ended up like people were on like 10, 12 medications, right? And I have patients who I help support who are in that position right now. But I was like, there's gotta be another way, right? Like, this can't be the only way of practicing medicine. Clearly it works. Clearly it can help a lot of people, but there's gotta be other ways. This can't be the only way. And I had the opportunity then in undergrad to travel to Guatemala, and I was doing like organic farming. And within that, I learned about like how important nutrition is, not just in like maintaining weight, which is what I think the only thing we talk about with like nutrition or diet for in our country is just like weight loss, weight loss, weight loss. And I'm like, there's so much more to it. And even with weight loss, like there's like, how much of that is actually just trying to sell us, right? Like, and profit making industries. And we can get into that later. But so I learned about how important nutrition was, but also I had the opportunity to have like a Mayan healing session, and it was the coolest experience ever. And that was what really opened my eyes to, whoa, there's other things out there. And then I remembered, which is a funny thing to say, but I remembered that I am actually Indian American, and I grew up with Ayurvedic medicine, which is ancient Indian medicine. And I grew up drinking these turmeric lattes and golden milk and the ashwagandha and all this stuff that yoga, all this stuff that's become super popular now.
Yeah.
I grew up with it. And I remember it was very helpful. So like the turmeric lattes, right, that are becoming popular. Like when we get sick, we would drink that. We didn't like it because they put way more turmeric in it than they do in the cafes. So it's definitely more bitter. But I was like, okay, we have this medicine. So there was something else. And so then after undergrad, I decided to explore that further. And I went to India and learned a little bit more about Ayurvedic medicine. And I was just like, when I came back, I was like, there's so much more out there. And I want to learn, if I can, all of it. But I don't, like, now being in this world, I'm like, there's no way I'll learn all of it in my lifetime.
Right.
But there's so much to learn. And so I was like, I want to help support people with nutrition, with movement, with herbal medicine, with like anything other than just medications. I want to have like this whole toolbox. And then I learned so much more after that, like physical medicine, homeopathy, flower essences, all these energy work, all these other different things that I didn't even consider when starting naturopathic medicine. So that was kind of where I started diving deeper and deeper into this. And then from there, I was working part-time with an optometrist, and she was from Seattle. And in Washington, it's a completely different world than Ohio, where naturopathic medicine is actually covered under insurance there. Not even like considered here in Ohio yet. And it's covered under insurance. So she was seeing a naturopathic doctor while she was in Seattle. And when I told her about all the things I was passionate about, she was like, have you heard of this? And I was like, no, what is this? And she was like, look up Bastyr. It's a great school. And I looked it up, looked up the principles, and I was like, this is exactly what I need to be doing. And that was it.
Man, okay, so there are so many things that I want to dive into there.
Let's do it.
So honestly, one of my first questions is why, even though I feel like I know a form of what the answer could be, but I for sure want to hear it from you. What do you think made like such the Americanized version of medicine? Why is it just the like, if you have this, then get another medication for that. And if you have this, add another pill to the daily routine. Like, where, like, is it because it became so business and commercialized and money got involved and it became less about the actual health and more about the commercialization?
Yeah, I would definitely say that that's mostly where that came from, right? So the profitization of healthcare. And we're one of the only nations in the world that even has pharmaceutical ads. I think there's two nations. It's the US and New Zealand. And even New Zealand has some restrictions around the type of pharmaceuticals that can be advertised, but no other country is it legal to advertise pharmaceutical drugs on your TV or commercials. And so that just shows, again, already one, where that money comes in. But what happened in terms of like the switch from naturopathic medicine or indigenous medicine practices, and because this conventional way of practicing medicine is only a little over 100 years old. It started in the early 1900s with the discovery of antibiotics, which was, of course, a great discovery. Like, it saved so many lives. And then, of course, we overdid them. But it saved so many lives, and it was an amazing discovery. And so from there, because there were companies that realized they could profit off of this sort of system, that's where it kind of really just started to shift into a more profit-driven healthcare system. And then, of course, as we know today, and we're seeing more and more of the uprising with the civil rights movement, we're realizing how much racism still persists, but of course was a thing back in that time. And so things like marijuana right now, it's finally, we're allowed to do research on it. When we've, like, indigenous cultures have known the benefits of marijuana or cannabis for thousands of years. Does that mean that I'm like promoting doing it recreationally or anything like that? No, but we know that it's had medicinal benefits for thousands of years. And that was suppressed because of both profits and racism. And that is essentially where the suppression of all indigenous medicines came from, because that's where that idea came from, that what you do over here, you like the indigenous people, like, what you do cannot be right? Like this weird way of using herbs and like finding these trees in your backyard and using them as medicine, that's not it. That can't be right, because that's some weird uncivilized stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where I think a lot of it came from. But the reality is, a lot of the pharmaceutical medications that we have today come from herbs, right? So even aspirin, it comes from willow bark. And I've had like tooth pain before, and I was on an herbal medicine trip. It was really cool. We found willow bark, and I was having some tooth pain, and I just chewed on the willow bark, and the pain went away. And it was like, that's so cool, like, because that is literally why aspirin was created.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my answer to what.
Why do you think, is it just the monetization, commercialization of the medicines that made people just like look at any sort of like natural remedies to things and scoff at it for so long? Do you think just over time it became such a like, well, if it's not in the pill bottle on the commercial, that's just so weird? Like, what is it you think made people, I guess, turn a blind eye, for lack of a better term, to those sort of things?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what happened, right? So the media has so much control over the way we think and feel about anything. And so when we start to see that in the media, that like, oh, this pill is going to help alleviate my pain immediately, whereas maybe, starting an anti-inflammatory diet might take a few months to actually see your pain reduced, right? So seeing those kinds of things, like, and having that immediate reaction is, I think, where we kind of started getting more addicted to the pharmaceuticals. And that's, that goes with everything, right? With social media, with the internet, like everything, we want it now. We want everything so fast. And that's no different with relief. We want relief now. And a lot of natural medicines don't work that quickly. There are some that do. And I think that's like a big misconception. People always think that natural medicines won't work as well or as quickly, but there are definitely some that do. And I've had people who've like been in pain, like menstrual cramps, like with endometriosis or something like that, and ibuprofen doesn't help, Advil doesn't help, but drinking golden milk does.
Yeah.
Just like 1 cup of golden milk will alleviate their pain within 20 minutes. And it's like, it's crazy that it can be so powerful yet so gentle at the same time.
Well, that was literally the next thing I was going to ask you was, it has to feed into the like, I want it now culture. And that is probably why it's like, well, I could change my diet or what I ingest over the next 6 months, but I would rather this happen right now. And that's why, like, even a past guest of the show, who's a health coach, Sarah Reed, her and I have talked about that, where there's so much that is fed into diet culture. And just that, like, so even outside of like the medicine, like the medicinal side, just in the food side in general, I mean, clearly, fast food is huge, and you want a burger now, and you're going to run through, and you don't even know how it's cooked in 30 seconds or whatever. Yeah. But, and I'm not going to pretend like I've never ingested that, like 100%.
Totally. We all have.
I am guilty of, I am 100% guilty of not following like the best diets. Like, so anybody listening to this, don't think that I'm like all of a sudden like, yeah, I know what I'm doing exactly. Not perfect for sure. But it's always so interesting because it does just feed into that idea of I want it right now. When it's like, oh man, like I always feel so sick after I eat, or it's always this. And it's like, well, maybe change up what you're eating. But I think where a lot of people go is, I feel like a lot of people don't even allow themselves the transition period to change a diet. Does that make sense? Like, it's just it's the same way that they want that burger now. If they don't want to eat those burgers anymore, they think that if they can't eat perfectly tomorrow, then there's no point in the diet.
There's no point. Exactly. And exactly that. And I think that goes along with everything outside of just diet too, like mindset too, like shifting your mindset like that. It takes time. It takes like giving yourself grace. It takes, and the same thing with the diet too. The way I eat today did not happen overnight, right? And so this is something that I always feel like, because people are always asking me about my diet, like, oh, what do you eat? And there are still times where I do indulge, but I haven't got into it, but we can go into it in a little bit. But I've had my own personal health issues, and I figured out what diet works best for me. And so it's become very individualized. And so, like, I always tell people, this didn't happen overnight. And even now, I just saw my PT, and she was telling me to do some exercises, and I was like, okay, telling me to do it every day. I'm telling you right now, I can try to do 4 times a week. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I know myself, and I do take slower steps. If I were to go 0 to 100 real quick, it's not going to be sustainable. Right. And I think that's what we don't realize. We can give ourselves grace through the process, and it's okay. It's okay to have like the burger occasionally and go to like McDonald's, but working on having most of your week, most of your meals not be McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
Like just, and that's kind of what it is. And with the fast food thing, it was really interesting what I was thinking about. My sister just came back from India after over almost 2 years, and she really wanted Tim Hortons. And so we went through the drive-thru and got it. It was within, I don't even understand how they got it done so fast. It was within 30 seconds. I was like, what did they do? They said they toasted it too? Like, I don't even understand.
Right.
Like, and so it is crazy because it is so quick, and that's the way our world is. And me not really consuming fast food anymore, I don't even realize how quick and cheap it can be. Being outside of the world now, I'm like, oh wow, this is really cheap, and that was fast as hell.
We were in and out of that drive-through in under a minute.
Yeah, it was less than a minute.
Wow.
I was like, how do they do that?
Okay, so on that topic, how do I want to frame this? There's so many different versions of fast food now. Now, one that I am guilty of liking too much, which I guess I don't know if I'd qualify it as a fast food, even though you get it quick. I guess when I think fast food, I think Wendy's, McDonald's, Taco Bell, that sort of stuff. One that I probably eat a little bit too much is Chipotle.
I knew you were going to say that.
That's probably that's everyone's go-to of like, I'm healthy because I eat Chipotle.
Yeah.
Now I bring that up to ask, like, one, are you seeing a shift in a lot of these like fast food-esque restaurants that are making more of like health conscious, like, healthy options? And my deeper question, my secondary question to that is, do you think that is mostly just like, that's the trend, that's what people want to see right now is, oh, this is healthier now, they've cleaned it up, so that's great? Or are those actual like moves into these places being healthier? Like, are there actually more healthy options popping up, whether or not like the, even if it's still bad food for you, is it like, hey, you know what? From what I know, like it is a little bit healthier for you, or everyone, you're getting tricked. It's not really that big a change.
Right. See, that's hard to tell, because I feel like then we can get into like, because we don't actually know for sure, right? So like when Chipotle now they are having more organic options and things like that, I believe, and so the reality is maybe they are, you know. I just don't know. I don't think any restaurant, whether it's fast food or like any like even healthy restaurant, like I don't think it's ever going to be up to the same par or quality if you make it at home. Right. Because then you actually know what you're getting. But with that said, I think some places like, I think Chipotle is one of the few that like seems like they're actually trying. But there are other, you know, like Wendy's will talk about their salad or something, and I like look at their salad and I'm like, that's not healthy. And the dressing has just like so much sugar in it or something like that, you know? So I think a lot of it's also the trendiness, right? That's the marketing. I mean, even Coca-Cola has created like a sparkling water drink.
Right.
And bubbly or something. I saw it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because I've been getting into all the sparkling drinks, and I've just been trying to figure out which one, because I'm just trying to explore more non-alcoholic drinks. And I was like looking at that one, and I was like, and I look at all the ingredients because that's what I do. And it's just like, you see that there's so much more stuff in that one than like maybe like another brand like Olipop or something like that. And then I like read, it's like Coke, it's a Coke product. And I'm like, oh wow, they're like jumping on the trend too, you know, because they know that that's what people are wanting, and they think it's healthier, than drinking Coke. And it might be.
Right.
But it's still not necessarily healthy. Yeah.
Now, so even in the medicinal side, are you seeing like a quote unquote trend in a lot of, I mean, clearly, I'm sure the answer is yes, but like, because there's so many new like fad diets and stuff that pop up, and it's like, hey, in 10 days, lose this and do this and switch this and whatever. How much of that, just like in the food world, do you think is like, how much of it do you feel like is just trend of like, hey, it's not good to lose 30 pounds in 10 days. It sounds great, but it's sort of just like this rush of like, oh my God, I want it now sort of culture. When again, it's like, how many of these things do you think are like, hey, this thing that's being promoted is a pretty good natural remedy to things. Honestly, hey, I would vouch for that one. And how many do you feel like are just like, it's honestly just the new marketing trend to say that it's super healthy. You change the packaging from whatever color to green, and now it's a natural thing.
Yeah, I would say it's more so the latter for sure. Most of the things, it really is that they're seeing that there's a trend. Like even like I said with the turmeric lattes, there are turmeric lattes I've seen, if you ask them about the ingredients, it's just filled with sugar. And I'm like, that's not anti-inflammatory anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah. If you're gonna have a sugary drink, have the sugary drink, but don't promote it as being healthy or anti-inflammatory as turmeric is supposed to be. But yeah, so a lot of it's the trends with the diets, right? The celery juice, and then like the superfoods and all this stuff, and the keto, vegan, paleo, all these carnivore, all these different things that are out there. It's really funny because I'll see some of the packaging and be like, it's like a keto mix, and then I'll look at the other one and it's like a regular one, and I'm like looking at the difference, and I'm like, there's actually no difference. This one just says keto and it's $1 more. Like if you really read into it, there really isn't a difference. And so yeah, so I would say a lot of it is really just the marketing, and some of the things can be really dangerous too. Like, so drinking celery juice, I remember like when that became really popular, so many women, especially, were getting on that trend to lose weight or have better skin or something, whatever they were looking for. And the reality is, like, celery juice is something that I recommend for people to lower their blood pressure. And so if someone has low or normal blood pressure already, it can lower their blood pressure even more, leading to like a lot of circulation issues and potentially like passing out and things like that. Now you're not getting proper oxygen flow to your brain. Like you don't You know what I mean? Like, you don't want your blood pressure to go that low. That's not good for you. And so yeah, I remember just like feeling stressed out when that became a very popular trend. And I was like, no, just it's not for everyone. Like, some people can benefit.
And I feel like it's probably, I guess it's easy to just be attracted to those like health trends because probably a lot of people aren't necessarily looking at, is this right for me? It's just more so, oh, this is healthy and cool.
Yeah.
So I guess I should do it.
This person lost weight doing it.
Right.
This person's skin cleared up doing it, whatever it is. And then they're like, I should just do it too.
Without like you just said, hey, this celery, drink or whatever, sure, it's healthy, or, it's being promoted as healthy and it's the trend right now. But like you just said, if it lowers your blood pressure and you don't need that lowered, then that is then going to turn from a health benefit to a side effect.
Exactly.
Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
I'm literally just throwing things out right now. I'm just like, I think this makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I mean, and I know some people who've ended up passing out from doing that. And thankfully they're okay, but at the same time, it's like, it could have been worse, And so it's just being mindful of all of these trends that they're not individualized for you. They're not like, and that's why I don't think all of these people who are promoting these things, I think some of them might have like some just like, malintentions where they're trying to just make money like real quick. But I think I do really, or I'd like to believe that most people have good intentions. And I think that usually like something like a lot of people who promote veganism or the keto diet, it worked for them. It really helped them. And they want to help other people. And I think they have the good intentions, but the reality is that it's not going to help everyone because everyone is different. Our environmental genetic makeup, yours and mine are completely different, right? And to say that the same exact type of movement, type of like type of diet, type of like even herbs or whatever, like is going to work for both of us, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to transition a little bit into talking about like specifically like gut health and what that involves.
Yes.
Because I've definitely seen, I know like you talk a lot about that online. And it's so fascinating to me because, again, obviously I just want to learn more about it. But I mean, it kind of goes into the classic thing that I feel like is coming to light more of like if you have a healthier gut that directly relates to your mental health and how it's not just about your physical shape of your body with how you eat or your diet or whatever it is. But a lot of this, like your physical health, does play directly into your mental health. So honestly, just take me a deep dive into everything. Like, let's talk about gut health and how that relates into someone's mental health.
Yeah, definitely. I love talking about this. So you clearly know that because I'm always posting about gut health, because all health begins in the gut. So Hippocrates, the quote unquote father of modern medicine, said that. Chinese medicine says that, Ayurvedic medicine says that, some indigenous practices, literally all of these practices have forever been saying that all of health begins in the gut. And so this is why I'm so passionate about it. Because when you can heal your gut and have a healthy gut, then pretty much everything will fall into place from there. And so with that said, what is the gut? Starting with that, right? I think gut health is just like become also like a buzzword, a buzz phrase, and people just love saying gut health now. Like, oh, here's ways to help your gut health, things like that. But what is it? Your gut is literally everything from your oral cavity all the way down to your anus. So it's not just your colon over here. Like, it literally starts with your oral cavity. So it starts with oral hygiene is actually going to be important in maintaining optimal gut health because you have an oral microbiome, you have a gut microbiome. And all of that plays into it. And so that's what your gut is. And so if you have any sort of symptoms within that whole digestive tract, so whether it's like heartburn or reflux or so like starting from up here, heartburn, reflux, you're getting a lot of cavities, gingivitis starting from there. And then going into having any, of course, pain or constipation, diarrhea, bloating, gas, undigested food in your stool, mucus, of course, blood in your stool. That's definitely something you got to get checked out. But any of those things, and your And so let's say that you're not sure if you're feeling constipated or having diarrhea. If you're having less than 1 bowel movement a day, then that would be considered constipation. If you're having more than 3 bowel movements a day, on average, it would be considered more diarrhea. Okay? And so your bowel movements are really just the best indicators of your health. So if you see any problems with your bowels, like that's where you know that there's something going on. There's something going on.
Right.
So everyone listening, I want you to check out your poop.
Look at your poop.
Look at your poop. Look at your poop. Because I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's gross. Like, I don't want to look at it. But like, that's going to be like the best indicator of your health ever.
That might be some of my favorite advice that has been given on this podcast so far. Look at your poop.
Look at your poop. Just do it. So that is, if you have any of those symptoms, then there's, of course, chronically, right? So if you have the symptom like once in a year or something, not as concerned. But if you're having these symptoms all the time, like I have patients, and I was personally this way too, where I was feeling bloated all the time. I was having constipation. I actually had constipation since I was born, pretty much. I was a colicky baby. And I was having a bowel movement like once a week. And a lot of my conventional doctors were like, maybe that's just your normal. It's not. It's not. You should have at least 1 bowel movement a day. And
yeah, I don't even think I am uneducated in a lot of this stuff. And if a doctor told me like, yeah, once a week, I'd be like, no, hold on. No, I don't think that's accurate at all.
Well, and the reality is for me, and I feel like so many other people out there, because that's always been their normal, right? You don't actually know.
Yeah.
And even though like I was in pain, whether I had a salad or pizza. So I was like, I'm just going to eat the pizza, of course, because why would I eat the salad?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
When that also gives me pain. But because my gut was so out of balance and I was not eating the proper type of veggies. And for me, it turned out that I actually need to be cooking my veggies based on Ayurvedic medicine. And so that's like a whole nother thing. And so when I started just eating cooked vegetables more, I was fine. And I started to feel so much better. And that was like a part of my healing. But yeah, just the concept, like when you're having this constipation or pain, and it's not normal. I'm just like, here it is. Like, it is not normal. And today, being here right now, I'm so grateful. That is something I'm grateful for every day. I might forget my gratitude journal sometimes, but every single day I poop, I'm like, I am so grateful for my bowel movement. I'm so grateful. I call her my gut goddess.
I love that.
So I'm so grateful for her.
I love that.
She does so much for me. And so, yeah, that is something that if you have any of these symptoms and you're experiencing it all the time, it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. And starting with some of the things that I put online and other people do in terms of optimizing gut health can definitely help, especially with diet and stuff. But oftentimes we need additional support to actually reverse a lot of the damage that's been done.
Right. Now, why do you think people make the separation from like physical health and mental health so much?
So let's get into the gut-brain connection then, and / gut mental health connection. So we talked about those digestive symptoms. There are people who will have none of those symptoms, but have a lot of mental health issues. And then I do a stool test on them, and we see there's a lot going on in their gut, right? So just because your body is able to compensate enough to not have digestive symptoms does not mean that your gut is in balance. And I think that is like one of the most important like things that I've learned is that, and it's the same thing with pretty much everything else in your health. Just because you have no digestive symptoms, but you're having acne or your hormones are out of balance, doesn't mean your gut is actually in balance. And so honing in a little bit more on mental health and brain health. So one of the things I always like to mention is that mental health is 100% associated with your brain health. Your mental health is affected by your neurochemistry. So neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, these are all neurotransmitters that can affect your mental health. So like it can, if you're not having enough of those, it can increase your risk of like anxiety, depression, OCD, bipolar disorder, ADHD, all of these conditions. And so that is directly connected. And I think a lot of people don't even realize that connection between your like physical brain and your mental health, because that is what just kind of tells you how to feel. From there, we have the gut-brain connection, though. And so this is also 100% connected, the gut and the brain. And it's a bidirectional pathway that works between our gut and our brain. So what's going on is we actually have, there's two parts of the way it's connected. One is the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is the nerve that connects from our brain to literally every one of those organs that I talked about in your gut. Okay? Every single one of those. And when that is activated, that's when you can stimulate your digestion. And that usually gets activated when you're in a parasympathetic state or a rest and digest state. So every time you're in a fight or flight response, so feeling stressed, it's unactivated or inactivated. And so this is why the stress management, self-care stuff is so important for your gut health too. So that's one way it's connected. Another way it's connected is that your gut microbiome, which consists of bacteria, viruses, fungi, even potentially like good parasites that we're learning more about, it should have all of these things. It's like an ecosystem of all these different microorganisms in our body. And so we actually have over 100 trillion bacteria in our body and only about 10 million human cells, which is crazy. So we're actually more bacteria than we are human, which is absurd, right?
Yeah, okay, okay.
So with that said, that means that not all bacteria are bad, obviously, because otherwise we'd all just be dead. But most of them are good, ideally, in our body. But when there's an imbalance of the good and bad, that's where a lot of the problems can occur. And so our bacteria are actually like sending from our gut, are sending signals up to our brain. So if we have more of the bad guys in our gut, they're sending those signals to like, shut off that serotonin. I don't need to be happy right now. Like, it's cool. Like we don't need this body that we're living in to be happy, because that's not what we want. And these bad guys are fed off of like things like sugar and processed foods and stuff like that. And so one way I like to put it is like, you want to arm the good guys and starve the bad guys, right? So we're going to arm the good guys. And that's the way I try to think of it, in a more like optimistic, nourishing type of way. I don't like the good or bad food kind of this idea of good or bad food.
Yeah.
I like being like, right, these foods are nourishing. These are healing me. These are supporting my good guys. And therefore then they're supporting my brain. They're supporting my mental health. Like, I'm going to help fuel these guys in there who are just like doing all that they can to like keep me healthy and happy and at peace. And that's what I'm going to do. So,
man, I am learning so much. So, okay. So let's talk about mindset stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't want to leave that behind. So clearly there's a direct correlation between like gut health and physical health and the way your brain works and the way you feel. Mm-hmm. How much of that like is do you think there is a balance between like, when we say mindset here, I guess maybe that's the question. When we say mindset, what is your like view or even definition of what mindset is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm curious to know how you define it too, because I don't think I've ever been asked that before. And the way, I guess I would say the way I view mindset is how you're working on yourself, not necessarily like this end result, right? And I think sometimes in our culture, we're always looking for like, okay, what's the destination? Like, what's the end result? And I don't necessarily think there's an end result in like optimizing mindset. I think it's more of like what you're working on. And when I think about mindset, I would say one of the most important things I think that can impact mindset is the words that we think and speak to ourselves. And that's what I usually tell people to be the most mindful of. So I would say that mindset is what you're mindful of.
Yeah.
That would be a good way to put it.
100%.
Yeah. What would you say?
Well, so like even the reason I asked that is because there has been a handful of times when, I feel like the word mindset gets thrown around on this podcast
Right,
a lot.
yeah.
And any
in the
podcast.
world,
Yes,
yeah,
everywhere.
like,
Everybody's learning about mindset.
Yeah.
And I'm no different. Just in the last couple of years did I feel like I got shown examples of what mindset is and then was able to put that into action for myself. So that's why now I'm always like, oh, mindset.
Yeah.
So anytime I've brought that up, I have noticed that people have different takes on what that is or how it is. Obviously, it all is like the branch of the same tree. It's different branches of the exact same thing. Like it all means the same thing, but it means different things to different people. So like to me, I feel like the most like actionable thing that I've taken away from mindset or learning what it is, it's not about, because I think it's very easy to get confused on this. A lot of people talking about mindset, it's not about pretending that everything's great or pretending that nothing goes wrong. Or I think when people hear mindset, that's immediately what they think is like, you have to pretend.
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of
It's
people
like
believe.
The part of that toxic positivity
Yes.
culture.
Yes. And where for me, what I feel like I've learned what mindset is or how it works best for me is the simplest way I can put this so I don't ramble is reaction. Is like one of the biggest things that I feel like I've learned that I remind myself of so much, and literally any situation, this thought fires in my brain and I'm like, okay, I can control this, is what happens to you doesn't matter. Your reaction to it does. So the worst of worst things can happen. And that doesn't mean you have to act like it didn't happen. It doesn't mean you pretend like it's not that bad. 100%. Let all the emotions flow. It's awful. It's terrible. It's scary. It's whatever. But what you do with that, what you do after that, I feel like is the biggest push or use of a mindset. And maybe this is maybe getting a little too particular, but I also believe it comes in the form of either being reactionary or proactive with the way you do things.
I love that.
That's like a lot of like the practicality that I've found from mindset and how, I can actively remind myself of how to use it. Because again, it's not just like, oh, I'm having a bad day or this bad thing happened to me. Well, actually, think of mindset. I guess it's not that bad at all. 100%. It can be terrible. It can be hard, whatever it is. But how I react to that, how I choose to work through that, work around it, whatever it is, those decisions, that's where I feel like mindset comes into play, at least for me, a lot. And that's always why I'm just so interested to get people's takes on like how they use mindset or how they view it.
Yeah, definitely. And it was, I was trying to figure out how to put like a reaction part of it. And I love that the way that you put it, because it is so much of the reaction. And do you know Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Yes, actually, yes. That name is super familiar.
Yeah, he's amazing. Definitely check him out more. Like he has some cool books. I have read You Are the Placebo, which is a really cool book where he goes into how powerful our minds can really be in helping us heal.
Yeah.
But he actually has a new book that I haven't read yet, but it's called Becoming Supernatural. And I definitely want to explore it. But one of the things he talks about is it's important to feel your feelings, right? You got to feel your feelings. And I'm so grateful that we're talking about that now. But I think sometimes now in our culture with mental health, thankfully becoming more of like a real issue. Like people are realizing, oh yeah, that's a real thing. And I'm so glad people realize that. And there's two problems I think that have come out of that is one, the overprescription of antidepressants. And that's of course another issue. But the other part where we're talking about is I think sometimes we then tend to get into this victim mindset.
Yeah.
Right? Where like, I went through this experience. That's why I'm going through all this still. I went through this experience. And what he talks about is that it is completely valid. Your experiences are valid and real, and no one's taking that experience away from you. But how are you reacting now to that experience? What are you doing with that experience? And and how long are you dwelling in that emotion, right? Like how long are you feeling that feeling where it's actually now consuming you and it's not necessarily supporting you in any way.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's, I don't want this to sound super negative. Do you feel like there's almost a glamorization somewhat of depression and anxiety now? Because it's almost like kind of how we've been talking about where things go from 0 to 100 of like food is instant, medicine is instant, blah, blah, blah. I want it now, where and maybe I could be totally off base with this, but I almost feel like with the conversation of mental health and anxiety and depression and all these things that have somewhat almost become buzzwords in a way, have become a little bit more prominent. I almost feel like there's a really tough balance that people are making right now, to where, is it being glamorized and we're just saying like, oh my God, yeah, I'm depressed, rather than being like, okay, what does that mean? What do I do about it?
Right.
How can I help somebody who says that they are that way? And it's the other side of the balance, is like doing the practical things, truly identifying those things, and not just saying like, oh my God, I'm sad, that's just how it is, ha ha ha, I'm so sad, I hate my life. When I feel like there's like a subtle glamorization of it.
Yeah.
Like, as the more it's coming to light, the more it's like almost too much. It's like, just again, 0 to 100, just like, we're sad, everyone's sad. It's like, well, yes, great, we identified it, that's cool, but what do we do about it? Let's figure that part out.
Yeah. No, I actually have been feeling like that a lot. And that is so much of the American culture, right? Mm-hmm. We go so much from like, this is one good thing, now let's do way too much of it.
Yeah.
And like I said, with the antibiotics, even like with our technology, all this stuff, we're always going 0 to 100 real quick. And I think that's what we're doing also with mental health. And, I was actually having a conversation with someone earlier where how like a lot of the boomer generation was like, you don't have feelings, get over it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then we were coming in as millennials and Gen Z, now are coming in like, no, we have feelings and it's okay to feel, but then are we going too far into it, right? Did we just tip the scale from one end to the complete opposite end?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's kind of where we're going. And so it's like, all right, let's find that balance. Like, it's okay to feel. Yes, it is. But are you holding on to that feeling and never letting that go? Mm-hmm. And I think a part of that is like, this is a part of one of the things that I'm really passionate about in helping people work on their mindset is like I said, the words that you think and speak to yourself. And one of the things that I realized one day, I was like watching a Bollywood movie. I speak Hindi and Gujarati outside of English. And I just realized that in those languages, we don't embody our emotions, but in English we do. So we say things like, I am sad, I am depressed, I am hungry even, I am angry. Every other language that I know of, and that my friends speak, like outside of the few languages that I know, and the few that I Google translated just out of curiosity, they all say I feel. So it's temporary, right? When we say I am, we make it permanent. We're like, in our body kind of, when we tell our brain that, our brain's like, oh no, this is just the way it is, right? Like, this is it, done, we're done. So like, I am a diabetic even, right? Oh, that's it. That's done. That's who I am. And that's it. Instead of saying, I have diabetes. Or like saying, I have Hashimoto's, which is what I have, right? So changing that mindset to like, I feel depressed. I feel sad. I feel angry. But that's not me, right? That's not who I am. That's just a feeling that I'm experiencing temporarily. Yeah. And it will pass. And I think that is something, again, it's just like ingrained in our culture that we just immediately say, I am this way. And this is something I've been really passionate about for myself and my patients. I'm like, remind yourself, like anytime you feel that, like one thing I feel like I still will do is like, I'll be like, I'm tired. Like I'm just so exhausted. I'm like, no, that's not who I am. I feel exhausted, and I like have to catch myself doing that too.
Man, I love that. I haven't heard that explained that way before. Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah. That is, because I feel like in that like glamorization process of these things of saying I am this, I am that, and throwing it out there, like we were talking about with the balance thing. It's like, there's friends of mine that want to talk about how sad they are and make mention of how depressed they always are. But then when it's like, okay, you're bringing it up, hey, let's talk about it. Let's get it off your chest. Let's see. Yeah. Let's talk through it. No, I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
But you do want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
like
completely
you're bringing
imbalanced.
it up, letting me know.
Yes, and it's
that-
like, again, are you glamorizing the feeling?
Right.
Are you just saying it because it's like the trendy thing to say of like, oh my gosh, I'm so sad?
Yeah.
Or are you bringing it up of like, hey, maybe a hint of like, okay, cool, can we open that door and have that conversation now? Like, and I know that that's, you know, probably another thing that a lot of people are trying to grow through and into, and, you know, like I can't sit and, you know, say that like, you know, I am a person who like, anybody at any moment in time could come to me with like the heaviest of conversations, and I'm going to be like, let's talk about it. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Love any of those conversations, even if they're not, you know, the most fun. Like, let's talk about everything. So I understand that I'm that way, and
not everyone is.
Not everybody else is. So
Most
you know,
people
it's
aren't.
yes.
So that's a really good quality that you have. Like,
and like that's I think the tricky thing to even balance as a person who wants to have those conversations is, again, it's like, okay, like this person is bringing up that they're sad or depressed or whatever, and I'm ready to be an open book, and I'm like, I'll give you 19 examples of what I've went through, and what do you think, and let's just talk about it and get it off our chests and out of our heads and whatever. But not everybody is ready to do that, even though, you know, maybe like society is pushing towards those things. But exactly like we've been saying, it's like, are we finding the middle ground, or are we going from 0 to 100 real quick, where 100 is just saying it and trying to kind of embody it, but it's not actually owning it and fixing it or finding a solution.
And I feel like that is a lot of it. Like, I mean, I was just thinking about all the like the t-shirts out there and stuff, like on like talking about like, oh, I'm high anxiety, or like, and it's just like, this isn't like, it's just weird to me, because I'm like, why do you have a t-shirt that like just says what you're experiencing, you know?
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing to me. So even like, I was a person that and I still am the type of person that tends more towards anxiety, right? And so that is something, again, I'm very mindful of. I'm not anxious. That's not who I am. I tend towards anxiety. And when I'm not taking care of myself, when I'm not doing all the self-care things that I need to do and that I know support me and my well-being. And so that is something that I like see, that I like, I had a friend who had just a hat that just said high anxiety. And I was like, why are you embodying this? Right? Like, no, this is, and the fact that that is all out there just makes me feel like it's just being glamorized even more and more.
Right. Yeah. Now, okay, so not to totally shift gears here, I want to dig into like your personal health journey, because you mentioned earlier, you know, like, hey, I identified my own problems or my own issues that I had to fix and get through, and that has now led you here to have this wealth of knowledge and be taking on clients and patients and helping other people. So take me back, like where did like your personal health journey begin, and what kind of started it all?
Yeah, definitely. So I've actually had health issues since I was born. So I had a tongue tie, so I was unable to latch, and so I couldn't breastfeed or like breastfeed. Yeah. I was formula fed. And so that was one part of it. But then I actually had an inguinal hernia when I was 6 months old. And so I had a surgery then, and then that led to a lot of antibiotic use at 6 months old when my immune system is developing. And that led to me getting sick often, and I got allergies and asthma, and so in school I would get sick like 4 or 5 times a year. It was just like a common thing, and I'd miss a lot of school. I remember I'd always be like, I'm never getting that perfect attendance award. I was like, that's not my life. But yeah, so that was kind of where things started. And then when I was 9 years old, I started experiencing back pain. A lot of the doctors were like, oh, maybe it's because you play basketball. Like, I'm not a pro. I'm a 9-year-old basketball player.
Like, I'm not like touring around the world like
Yeah, and I'm 9. So even if I was like playing really intensely, it should be okay.
Is that the answer for all the other 9-year-olds that are playing basketball? Like, wait, like, is that
right?
So
like, yeah. So anyway, so I started experiencing that back pain that didn't go away literally till I was about 23 when I started naturopathic medicine. Or 24, yeah, around that time when I actually started naturopathic medicine. And, but yeah, so I had the back pain started when I was 9, and then I started my cycle, my menstrual cycle, and it was never normal. I never had a normal cycle again until I was about 24. And then what else happened? I started to experience some joint pain. So those are the basic symptoms. And while all this is happening, I still always had my digestive issues, literally, again, since birth. So I would be like that kid after eating a meal, just like curled up in a ball in so much pain. So not fun stuff, but yeah, that's why I think that this path that I was on really just like I was meant to be here to heal myself and then support others in healing themselves. And so it wasn't until actually I started naturopathic medical school where I realized that all of my symptoms were not normal because at this point I just accepted them, right? I was just like, I guess I don't know what to do. So I guess this is it.
I shouldn't have played basketball when I was 9.
I know. Should have quit. I mean, I continued to play. And so that's the thing. Like I was still able to function. And so it was never something that really stopped me, you know? And I was clearly like I was still able to play. And then I was on a dance team in college. So I was able to do that. And then I, even like was smart enough and like was able and capable to get to med school. Right. So it wasn't like it really fully hindered me from anything. Sometimes I wonder how much better I could have potentially been. But when I was in naturopathic medical school was when the naturopathic doctor was like, that is not normal. And we were doing like physical exam practice on each other. And one of the other students, she was like, I feel like I can feel your thyroid. And you're not supposed to be able to feel the thyroid. It's only if it's inflamed or usually someone has Hashimoto's or something. And so then that's when we did the extended testing with my doctor and found out that I have Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism. And if you look at the symptoms of Hashimoto's, literally everything I mentioned is a symptom of Hashimoto's. The only symptom that I didn't have that most conventional doctors were just confused about was weight gain. And so that was the only symptom that I didn't have, but that's like the only symptom that most conventional doctors are really looking for when it comes to hypothyroidism. And so that was kind of the issue there. And that's where I'm like, okay, weight doesn't mean anything. Weight doesn't really mean anything at all. So people could be like normal weight and still have clearly a lot of health issues. And then people could, I was actually more underweight at that time too. And then people could be overweight and have no health issues, according to the BMI, you know? And I've had so many patients, I'm like, oh yeah, you're doing great. Like your lab markers look good. You feel good? Cool. Like if you don't feel good, then we'll talk about it. But if you feel good, that's all I care about. I want you to feel great.
Right.
Yeah, so that's my story.
That's so fascinating that, I mean, literally like when you started going to school and learning about these things is when you actually learned what you needed to do to fix a lot of your personal issues with this stuff. Mm-hmm. So was that kind of just the immediate kick of like, okay, I've officially identified these things. Now I need to try and figure out what works for me, and I'm just going to go from here.
Right. And so that's where I got, some guidance from my naturopathic doctor on, what's the research out there with Hashimoto's? What is the one thing that, or not one thing, what are the things that I need to do? And I remember when I found out that I had Hashimoto's, I was so relieved. And so many of my patients and clients experience this too. They're like, oh, I finally know. Like, where it's like, sometimes like you get it like a diagnosis and you're just like, I mean, there are some diagnoses that I feel like I would be distraught with, but like they're like just knowing that like it's not all in your head, you're not just crazy, which I think a lot of people experience, unfortunately, because people don't know what to do. If we only do the basic labs that are covered under insurance right now, most people will seem like they're totally healthy, and even though you're feeling like shit. And the reason for that is those basic labs are essentially to rule out things like cancer, and which is great that you don't have cancer then, but doesn't mean that you don't have other issues, right? And so that was the catalyst. I was like, all right, cool, what can I do? And one of the first things was going gluten-free for me, and because gluten has been studied to be one of the main triggers of Hashimoto's, one of the things that can lead to the exacerbation of Hashimoto's. And there's like a whole thing on how that works and creates an autoimmune reaction in your body. And so I was like, okay, the research is there. My doctor is telling me that I should do this. I'm like, but pizza. And so I did it for, I just committed to it for a month, and I was like, I don't know if I really noticed much of a difference. And then I had gluten, and I was like, all those symptoms came back, and I was like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. And so then I committed to it pretty much for the rest of my life then.
So what was, even digging a little bit deeper, what was that like transitionary period like? Were you like, just now that you had your answer of, now you have this new goal in front of you of like, this is what I need to work towards to solve these problems, were you just like, I got it, I know exactly what to do, I'm going for it? Or was it like, oh my God, day 3 without pizza? Are you kidding me? Like,
yeah, no, it was definitely a process, right? I think initially, as soon as they told me, I still had gluten occasionally. And then I went back to the visit, and the doctor was like, you know the research. You're a doctor. Like, you know it's there. Just avoid it, at least for a month. And that was when I finally gave the full month like challenge. And I was like, all right. And during that time, I found journaling to be very helpful, because I would just like vent in that journal and be like, I just want this freaking cupcake, or like, I just want the freaking pizza, and the gluten-free one doesn't taste as good, all the things that I like was experiencing. And that's what I always recommend. I'm like, all right, like go through that first. Like, you're gonna feel angry, you're gonna feel sad because you can't have the same food as your like partner or friend or whoever. And that's okay, because that's a part of the journey. And what I call it now is short-term suffering for long-term wellness.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what I went through, was that short-term suffering, because I knew that I would experience long-term wellness if I went through that short-term suffering.
Which is funny, because I feel like so much of what we talked about is the exact opposite, is you get the short-term win of like this immediate diet or whatever, but actually gives you long-term health effects.
Yes,
like
exactly.
So it's just the complete opposite.
It's the complete opposite. So it's having that faith. And one thing I did forget to mention was in med school too. I think this was my first year or second year, actually, maybe it was. I was already starting my like diet and like lifestyle journey, or more so I'd really been focusing on the nutrition, but one thing I forgot about was how to manage stress, right? Being in med school was like really stressful, even though it was naturopathic school. It was still a lot going on. And I had my first panic attack while I was driving. And after that point, I was like, that was so dangerous, super unsafe. Like, I could have hurt myself or other people in being in that place. And so after that, that was when I became very passionate about like doing all the self-care things, figuring out healthy stress management techniques, right? And I call things like alcohol, weed, watching TV, social media, I call them all like pseudo stress relievers, because they like make you feel like you're relaxing, but really they're doing the opposite. And so finding those healthy stress management techniques, and that's when I like got into yoga and meditation and breath work and all of that stuff. And yeah, and that was kind of where that journey started. You
literally answered the next question that I had in mind, because that was the next thing, is I was going to be like, okay, you're going through this while also going through school.
Yeah.
What was it like balancing that? But you just laid all that out.
I mean, yeah, it's hard.
So taking us back even a little bit more, you said, you'd always kind of, even though you had these issues growing up, you had always, you had been around these sort of like natural remedies and stuff and all that. So like, I guess take me through like what was growing up like? Like, are you from Columbus, or like another state where like, what was growing up like?
Yeah, for sure. So I was born in Columbus, and then actually lived in West Virginia for about 10 years. And then I moved back here for high school. So I say I'm mostly from Columbus, but I give my West Virginia a little bit of cred there. But yeah, so it was definitely even a different experience. It's really funny, because I went to Olentangy High School, and it's really not that diverse. But when I moved from West Virginia to Olentangy, I was like, oh, this school is so diverse. And it's really funny, like just like perspective.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
difference.
I'm so sorry for interrupting you, but like, I mean, I am originally from like an hour southeast of here, from a small town, and even that little bit of area, like distance, vastly different up here than it is down there.
Completely.
Totally different.
Yeah. And so like, of course that affects like different shifts. Like, I mean, in my mental health and my like having community and things like that. But outside of that, like when it comes to like the medicines and stuff that like Indian food is full of medicine. And so I'm grateful that I got to grow up with that. I feel a little bit like, I guess a little bit of like angst or anger towards the fact that like there's a lot of shift in like the type of oils that we use and things like that, because they're like canola oil is way cheaper than coconut oil, you know, but in India they were using sesame oil or coconut oil, and sesame oil is way more expensive than canola oil. And so just like I feel some like feelings around that, but the spices that we put in our foods, now we're just learning every single day more and more how all of these spices have so many different benefits. And I wish that I wasn't so, I guess I don't necessarily wish this because I love my younger self, but but I remember like getting made fun of for having Indian food at school, you know, whether it was here or in West Virginia. Like I was getting made fun of for Indian food regardless, because it smells funny, you know. And so we, like, my siblings and I begged our parents, we're like, can we just have a PB&J or a freaking Lunchable for lunch? And now I'm like, damn, we should have been eating that Indian food. Like, we would have had so many more veggies, you know, like instead of just eating all of that, just like processed junk.
Yeah.
Like, PB&Js weren't the worst, thankfully, but like other stuff, like, you know, we were still eating white bread, so it really wasn't that great. And so yeah, with that, that was kind of my experience. So we were like trying to actually shift away from our culture. Like we would put oil in our hair and we would get made fun of for that. And now we're realizing how putting oil in your hair can help with help prevent grays. It can help with preventing hair loss. It can just like help make your hair more voluptuous and like healthier and thicker, you know? And so now I do it again, but it's just funny because there was like a whole time where I was like, Mom, I don't want to do this. I get made fun of, you know? And so it's a really interesting thing because I was actually trying to get away from my Indian roots.
Right.
And as I grew older, I was like, wait, they had something going for them.
Of
course.
Know?
Yeah.
So growing up, family mostly like really was sticking to traditions and really had the Indian culture still like in the household, to where you as a child were like, no, but it's not like all this other stuff, and I have to change. Well, please, can we have the PB&J? So tradition was for sure there, like a lot as you were growing up.
Yes.
But you had to go through that like phase of like, no, I don't want to do this, and then of course now,
cool.
Now you can sit here and be like, nope, that was great. There was nothing wrong with that. Like, so even like going through like high school and when you're about to go into college, when did you really make the decision of like what you were even, you know, that you're going to go become a doctor? Like, was there ever anything else that you were like, hey, this is a thing I want to try, this thing I want to do, or I don't want to go to college? You know, what was all that like?
Well, being Indian American, not going to college was not an option.
Right.
It was just not an option for us. But yeah, that was, I mean, I went through so much. Like I said when I was like 5 years old that because my pediatrician had helped me so much when I had my asthma attack, and I was always going back to see him because I was always sick. And so he was always such a fun guy and always had supported me. And so I, like, at that age, I was like, I want to be a pediatrician when I grow up. And my mom kind of held on to that. She's like, oh, she's going to be a doctor. Being, again, Indian American, like that was like one of the only options. But when I got to college, I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, you know, and I just started exploring so many different avenues and like was in journalism and nutrition and political science, and I literally explored everything because I do tend to be a jack of all trades, and I still love all those things, and that's why a part of what I do now is I own my own practice, and it's the business side of things, and I love it. Like, I love doing the business side of things as well as the clinical side of like actually working with patients. But then I also like doing like the patient advocacy stuff through legislation. And so I'm literally doing all of the things now, and I feel like this is why I'm so grateful for what I found, because I can do all of it.
Right. So let's get into that.
Yeah.
So I guess take me through, like, when did you start the brand? When did you start Mahan Health? Like, is that like a straight out of college thing? Is it like, walk me through that process. Like, what was it like starting that thing up?
Yeah, definitely. It was not like, it became an idea, I think it was my last year of medical school, where that was like, okay, I want to have my own practice. And again, where I went from like completely distancing myself from my roots as a younger woman, when I got to college was when I started to get more excited about my own roots, and met so many more Indian Americans who went through similar experiences, and I just fell back in love with my culture. And then of course finding the medicine, and I'm like, oh my God, we have this like amazing medicine that's been around for over 5,000 years and no one's utilizing it. What is going on, right? So like realizing like all the beautiful things about my culture, I wanted to somehow bring that back in my own life. And Mahan is something that a lot of Indian people actually say. Like, well, they'll be like Mera Bharat Mahan, like this, my great India, or like, or just, well, they'll say it all the time, where it's just like the absolute best. And I've always thought it was just a cool word too. And I was like, that's a word that people can say. One, right? It's not difficult to say, but it actually means something to me, and it means something that it also comes back to my roots. So Mahan in Sanskrit literally translates to great or the absolute best. And so, and when I experienced that, and still do, and I don't think experiencing the absolute best health means that you never have times where you dip, right? So I think sometimes people are like, oh, but you get sick too? And I'm like, yes, I can also
It either has to be perfect or not at all. I don't understand.
Yeah, it's like, no, like it's still possible for me to get sick. I got COVID like back in April, and I had some symptoms, but they only lasted a day. So, you know, they're like, it's about being resilient is what I think of when I think of Mahan Health. And so that's where my practice came from. And I was like, I experience this. I want everyone to experience this. Like, I feel like I feel just so much sharper and able to do all the things that I want to do now. And I want people to be able to live out their dreams, whether that's like having a baby, because I help a lot of couples conceive, or climbing Machu Picchu, you know, or like whatever it is. Like, I want you to be able to do it, and I don't want health to be something that hinders you from doing that.
Yeah, that is so dope. Yeah. Okay, so another thing that you do that I love is how you use your social media. So I want to talk about that. Okay. Like, because I know for me, no matter like, you know, how many different things I have my hands in, and podcast and this and directing and writing, you know, all this sort of stuff, I am always just like, oh my God, social media. Like, I don't know how I want to, like, I have, you know, for a big part of my life, like I was like the social media guy, where I was like, just always just like the content creator, always would, you know, like it was my job for a while, like all that sort of stuff. Now it's like I went through all that, and now I'm just so burnt out that I'm just like, I'm going to post if I want to, and it's whatever. But I see you like knocking out content and also using like TikTok and all that sort of stuff to share your knowledge and share the tips and the tricks and all that sort of stuff. So I guess, when did you like start doing that? When did you kind of dive into like, okay, I know how kind of I want to share this stuff and share the stuff from my practice on social?
Definitely. Yeah. So I actually started my social media page, also my last year of medical school. But it's evolved so much since then, right? Because I'm constantly changing and evolving. And I think for me, it was also similar to, I think even my like following count isn't like super high or anything like that. And I think it's because I do also do that too. I'm like, if I am not feeling this way right now, I'm not going to post something where I like look like I'm happy and just, you know what I mean? Like, and I know a lot of people will do that. They'll just like post an old thing or whatever. And I just feel so inauthentic doing that. And so my way of approaching social media, I don't know if it's the best way in terms of like whatever followers and likes, comments and all that stuff, but has always just been to be as authentic as possible. So just be myself, while sharing legitimate educational information and empowering people. And that has always just been kind of the way I go about it. And the other part of it is like, if it's not fun, it's not worth it. And that's why I love doing like the TikTok videos and stuff like that, because I'm like, it's so fun and I enjoy it. And if I don't enjoy it, then what's the point?
Yeah. You know? See, that's where I get caught up a lot. Is like, there have been so many people who are like, dude, you need to get on TikTok and like share like production stuff and whatever, and like share clips from the podcast on TikTok. And there's totally, I'm like, yeah, sure, that's a good, like, but I'm more so like, you want to do that for me? Like, do you want to cut the content that also needs to go on TikTok? Because I'm already cutting the content that's doing this and that. And like, for me, it's like, it's always that battle of, there is a lot of that stuff where I'm like, if I'm not feeling it right now, I know that I'm not authentically sharing this. And as silly as that might be to say, I'm 100% on that same like train of thought where I'm just like, I want to share the things that I genuinely want to share. Right. It's more so just like, yes, I'm doing some things to educate people, but I'm also doing things to entertain people. But I also need to enjoy doing it.
Yes.
Because for a long time, I was definitely caught up in the, I need to share so I can get the attention. 100%. That was me for a while. Yeah. It was like, I want to make things to get the attention and blah, blah, blah. And like, you know, once you start gaining a following and get some attention, you're like, oh my gosh, like then it becomes
addicting.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it becomes a thing you're addicted to and you're like, I need more. And literally just in the last couple of years have I been like, I just don't care. Like, because social media could go away tomorrow. What am I still left with? Am I still happy with what I'm left with? Just as if you couldn't post TikTok videos anymore, well, you still know everything that you're sharing in those TikTok videos. You still have a clientele. You still have relationships built off of authenticity with so many people that you can connect with in so many different ways. It's not just, well, I can't post a super bright and colorful photo anymore, so I don't know who I am.
Right.
You know, exactly. And I also feel like this is honestly something I really want your perspective on. You know, like the last year, it's been wacky up and down for everybody for multiple reasons. I feel like one thing that I've noticed that, as odd as this is to say, that was a positive, is I feel like there was almost how we were just giving that example of like, if social media went away, what would you be? What are you, right? What do you still have? I feel like last year was kind of a large example in a lot of ways, because a lot of people get their jobs or their normal lives taken away. And a lot of people literally had to stop and identify their surroundings and who they are. And I've had so many conversations with so many people over the last like 6 months or a year since it all started, of people saying like, I have realized what I was doing, I was not actually happy in, or I was just caught in the daily cycle of, I need to work, I need to get this done, I need to pump this stuff out on social media, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. But then when certain things got taken away and it was forced to stop, they were able to actually look at their surroundings and even look inside themselves and realize, oh, I need to make a change. So I would love your perspective. Like, have you experienced any of that same stuff? Did you personally experience it? Have you heard that from anybody? Or you're like, Roz, that doesn't make any sense in the podcast now. You're wrong.
No, I definitely think that makes a lot of sense. And there are so many people that I spoke to, and even myself, like, I remember right before the shutdown of everything, I was working like 80 to 100-hour weeks, and that was because I just started my practice actually January 2020. I literally just started, and I'd been just like, go. And even though I would take time out of my day to still do like these self-care things, I wasn't really just sitting with myself ever. You know what I mean? Like, I was still meditating. I was still doing yoga. I was still doing like my journaling and sometimes my tarot cards and all that stuff, and working out regularly. But I didn't really just like stop. Like, it was just like, oh, that's like something I have to do.
Yeah.
Instead of, this is something I'm experiencing. This is something that brings me joy, And so when that hit, I was like, oh my God, I need to slow down, And I realized I'm always promoting slowing down. I was like, oh shoot, I forgot to slow down. And this is something that we actually were talking about this before we started the podcast, is like slowing down with the seasons too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now even like my practice, I've had it for over a year, and I decrease the number of hours that I work in the winter, for the winter months, because I'm like, the days are shorter. I don't have as much energy. I just don't, because that's how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to hibernate. And so I was able to learn so much from that experience in itself, and just slow everything down.
Yeah.
And like you said, there were so many people that went through that kind of same experience. And I remember even like seeing High Street right before, like the Short North area, right before, and it was just like madness, right? And then as soon as this happened, it was like everything was just so peaceful. And I was like, we were just all in this like rat race, like go,
Yeah.
do this, do that. And no one just stopped and like to smell the roses. You know what I mean? Like that cliche saying, no one stopped to do that. And this gave people the opportunity to do that and realize if what they were doing was really their true calling or their passion. And I'm grateful mine was. I was right. And I just felt more in love with what I did, because I was able to support more people. And I was like, this is awesome. Like I feel like I'm in the right place. I'm doing all the right things. But I was able to realize that I could work so much less and still get the same amount of benefit.
Yeah. See, I had like a weird start-stop with it where, everything officially like shuts down. Okay, hey, we're on official quarantine. And, I work from home a lot. Working for yourself means you can work from home a lot, right? Yeah. So it wasn't like a super adjustment for me where I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm home a lot anyway. This just means no video productions or no meetings and, halting the podcast for a little bit. Okay. But then what happened for me actually wasn't the initial stop, but it was when things opened back up and it was like, hey, you can go do some things, keep it within these parameters, people can start getting back to work, whatever. Where we had this is lucky for sure. We had just a flood of video production work right when it was allowed to happen. So of course, initially I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's so great. Right. We have work. What? Like that's insane. So but it was just like too much too soon, to where what happened was awesome to get back to work and be doing things. But having been away from it for just enough amount of time, when you're back in it, I started noticing things that I didn't like about the stuff, where I'm like, this shouldn't be this annoying. This shouldn't be this miscommunicated. This shouldn't have been this hard. So there was a domino effect of like small things happening in every production, where after we got through that, like, I think it was like 2 months or so of like pretty much nonstop video production, I literally wanted to quit. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't want to do it anymore because it got taken away from me. Then it was given back to me. But the thing that was given back to me was bothering me, was almost doing more harm than it was good. It was just work. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't finding any fulfillment in it. I was just like, okay, wow, we're making all these things for all these other people. And actually that's not fulfilling me at all. Mm-hmm. But what that did, the positive from all that, is I was able to identify that and talk with my team about that. And my business partner, he and I had like a long conversation where I literally was like, if things keep up like this, and it's awesome we have work, but if it keeps feeling like this, I think within a year I will do something else. So what the key was well, being a creative of any sort, you need to make sure that you're creating for yourself. Right. Just as much as you get caught up in like, oh my gosh, I need clients, especially when you're self-employed. It's like, oh my God, I have to have work. This is insane if I don't. Yeah. But you get caught up in consistently putting all of your energy and time into things for only other people. And if you're not getting some sort of benefit outside of a payment from that, it's going to drain you. It's going to do more harm than it does good. So that was like my big identifier, where like we completely shifted after that of being way more like I don't know, just logical and almost like stern in the projects that we take on and how we would take them on. And it also like opened up a door finally to like start shooting a lot more projects that we wanted to shoot for ourselves when it comes to like me sitting here and being like, oh, I have so many scripts I want to work on. Well, we started actually shooting those scripts and shooting things and creating things that we wanted to create to where now I can sit here and I'm like, of course, I still want clients. I still want all that sort of stuff, but I found what that balance is now. Right. I found of what do I need out of it? What kind of jobs do we want or not want? What suits us? Are we the best suit for them, the best fit? But also, what are we doing for ourselves? Yeah. Are we taking the time to actually just be creative and have fun and make things that are going to further progress us past just this client work? Yes. I know that was such a long-winded explanation.
I love that.
But that's like, I feel like forever an example that I'm going to use for just identifying what's truly good for you and slowing down sometimes and then getting thrown back into it. You can identify those things. And it's like having lived that last year, I'm like, oh, okay, now I know how to like pay way more attention to this stuff.
And that's amazing. But one thing that I do want to mention though is like, I feel like we all tend to do this thing where like, oh, we finally found this balance, right? But balance is a constant practice too. Mm-hmm. So there might be another shift at some point in your career, like, or life, you know, that'll be like, oh wait, like, I don't know, now this feels like too much, or like I'm doing too much or too little of this. And like realizing like it's constantly shifting. And I think this like idea of like work-life balance or just having some balance is like also another buzzword, right? Like just like finding that balance. And it's like, and finding that balance is being able to recognize when we are out of balance, and it's okay to come out of balance a little bit, you know? And so, so I just want to make that clear, but like, that's awesome that you were able to identify that. And I would say actually my experience was kind of similar too, because initially I was like slowly coming back in, but I was seeing virtual patients throughout the whole time. So it didn't really affect me too much. But then I went to a point where I actually started getting really busy then, because I started my practice in January. So I didn't even have that many patients in March. It was just like I literally just started. I had the few that I had worked with before I started my practice, and really that was it, maybe a few more. And then I just started to get extremely busy. And then it was like that balance of like realizing, oh shoot, this is a full schedule for me. And I haven't had this yet. And so understanding like, okay, what is that balance like? Mm-hmm. And that's why a part of that for me was like, all right, in January, I was like cutting down my hours and going home and like having my dinner at 6 p.m. instead of 8 p.m. You know, like just like feeling that and like, all right, this is a part of it. And like, and taking a break was really absolutely essential at the end of the year. I was like, all right, I'm going to take 10 days off. And then like on the Sunday, right before I was going to start working on Monday, I was like, man, I'm so excited to work on my business. I'm so excited to see my patients again. Like, I wonder how they're doing, you know, like, and it was just a completely different feeling that I had just by taking a 10-day break. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're 100% right. In like that balance is never ending to figure out all those things. One good week where you're like, everything is perfectly balanced. That can change the next week. Like it is a consistent game of back and forth. Yeah. I also have to thank you for making me feel normal before the podcast, before we started rolling, when I was like, you know, it gets dark earlier and it's cold and I just am so low on energy. And you're like, yeah, that's normal. So,
it's totally normal.
It made me feel so much better because I'm like, I should always be on. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, yeah, it's dark at 5 and that's a crappy thing. But like, why am I upset about that? Like, why is my sleep schedule getting wacky or whatever it is? So even before we jumped on the podcast, you made me feel great and you gave great advice. And I guess it wasn't even advice. You were just like, here's the logic as to why that exists.
It's like completely normal. And this idea that we should be on all the time is completely just unfounded upon. Like, it doesn't make sense that we're supposed to be on all the time. And then in the winter, like as the days are shorter, we are supposed to spend less time working. And that's how it's always been. Like, we are supposed to spend more time sleeping, and that's okay. Like, I get sleepy at like 8 p.m. and I'm like, ooh, wait, it's only 8 p.m.? But I feel tired, so just listen to my body and go to sleep. I don't always do that.
Right.
Disclaimer. But that's like what I can strive to be. Like, all right, who cares if it's 8 p.m.? Like, my body's telling me to go to sleep, just go to sleep.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, I needed to hear all that because every winter, like I told you, it's clockwork.
Every winter,
the moment the season changes and the sun goes down earlier and it's colder and all this sort of stuff, immediately I'm just like, whoa, okay, like what's going on? And I'm one of those people that's like, no, I'm supposed to fight this. Like, this is not what this is. But then as soon as the sun is out later and it starts getting warmer, everything switches back.
Yeah.
Like
more
literal
energy.
clock. Yep.
You don't need as much sleep. Like, that's how it's supposed to be. Like,
Yeah.
we're supposed to use our like creative energy more in the in the summer, and in the winter, like it's supposed to be kind of becoming little hermits and coming in.
Right,
Like, all right,
right.
let's take in all that energy that we've created and everything that we've done in the summer and put it all together now.
Mm-hmm.
Just like slow it down.
You have made me feel normal. Thank you so much. Okay, so before we start to wrap up, if anybody's listening to this that is like, they've heard all the explanations of all this sort of stuff, but now maybe they're looking for like the real, just like straightforward advice. I would love to hear how you would just ball all this up of like, let's just say someone's listening and they're like, hey, I'm a possible patient, I'm a possible client, but I would just really love to know, like, how do I just get started with this stuff? How can I identify these things to figure out how to, find better mental health or better physical health or whatever that is? And this could be as long or as short as you would like it to be. What would you say to that person? A person who just comes to you and says, hey, how can I just get started in this? How can I identify these things?
I would say first starting to just become more aware of your own body, mind, spirit, starting to like become more aware of that, but also finding, like, even if anything that we talked about today, if you find one thing that you're like, I can do that, I can start making that change tomorrow or today even, right? Just do it. Don't wait, like kind of like what we talked about earlier. Like, don't be like, I got to do everything all at once. I got to start doing yoga and I got to start eating gluten-free or whatever it is, because gluten-free might not even be for you anyway. But just find something that is going to be beneficial for your long-term wellness and start to do that today. And then when you feel like that's become a habit, maybe add a new one. Right? Just adding things slowly and adding is really important too. Cause I think like we're always talking about taking away things, right? So instead of taking away, like adding one more vegetable in your diet every day, instead of eating no vegetables, now you eat 1 to 2 maybe, every day. So just like making some small changes like that, I think is the best way to get started. And when it comes to your mental health, like, I mean, we know breath work is extremely powerful, meditation, journaling. For some people, like myself, I'm one of those people that if I'm feeling like anxious or feeling more stressed, like I need to like move. I need to physically get it out of my body. So like dancing is amazing for me. I love dancing. Side note, I do want to mention, I want to plug dancing a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I've recently learned in the last few months was that in indigenous practices, shamans would actually, anytime someone would come to them with a mood disorder, so something like anxiety or depression, shamans, the first question they would ask is, when did you stop dancing? And when I learned that, I was like, oh my God, that is so true. Like, I feel like anytime I haven't been dancing for a while, that's when I start to feel some slumps, in my energy, my like mood. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. Like, I feel like dancing, it might just be the cure. Not saying that it is, but
right.
Legal disclaimer. But yeah, just like playing with that, like it doesn't have to be you're like doing like a choreographed TikTok video or a choreographed anything. You have to post it anywhere. Just like dance for fun with yourself and enjoy your time with yourself. I dance all the time when I'm cooking. Singing activates that vagus nerve. So finding like these little things that can help support your mental health, physical health, all of these things, like it's all connected. So you start doing one of these things, it's going to help everything. And so singing is a great, I'm one of the worst singers that you've probably ever heard. But yet I will sing, like I'll blast the music a little bit, you know, so I sound like Beyonce in my head.
Of course.
But really I don't. But either way, I'm activating my vagus nerve. So I'm getting my gut health going, my brain health. Like I'm activating these parts of my mind and body that are going to help support me in the long run. So doing simple things like that, just like jamming out in your car, that's medicine. Right. So realizing that it doesn't have to be that serious. I think that's like where I'll start. Like, it doesn't have to be that serious. Like, it can be super fun.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love that. So, okay. So what I guess maybe even from experiences, what do you, or would you say to somebody who they are looking for these solutions and they're hearing all of this stuff? What do you say to the people who are like, well, I tried some of those things and I just couldn't stick to it. It didn't work for me. I tried this diet that so-and-so said. When you get those people who are using the examples of like, well, I already gave it a shot and it's just not working. Mm-hmm. What do you say to those people?
So I would say that, one, how long did you try these things? Two, what else was going on in your life around that time? So again, and three, was that the right thing for you? Because like we talked about before, is everything is individualized. So no wellness plan. So I give each of my patients an individualized wellness plan. I have not had any single one of them, of my like 200 now patients and clients, that have been exactly the same. None of them have been exactly the same. There will be some elements that are similar, right? Or some of the things that are same, but there's always going to be something where it's different, because when I'm listening to you, I'm figuring out what you need to do to actually help you make these changes, right? So I'm going to support you in making these changes. And so what I would say is maybe getting some additional support at this point, because if you tried some of these things and they're still not working, then maybe that wasn't right for you, and you need a professional like myself or someone like myself who can help support you in making the right changes for you. And so then you can actually finally start to experience healing. And I would say that would be the main thing. It's just like, if you're at that point, find someone like myself or myself who can help support you there.
And this is not to like trail us off into a whole other thing, but something that I feel like has just been almost like an underlying theme in so much of what we talked about is like obviously finding what works for you. Mm-hmm. And so much of what you've explained in all of these things that we've talked about, I feel like is honestly in an odd way so comparable to like my world, like the production world, the creative world, because there's something that I heard on a podcast. I cannot remember what it was, but basically the gist was, in the creative world or in the business world, we'll say the business world, people misdiagnose and commit malpractice to their clients a lot. Now, the thing that you've noted through a lot of this is you have to find what works for you. And one of the major problems with kind of American medicine and all that sort of stuff is, you've even experienced it, somebody's looking for one thing, and if they don't see anything about that one thing, they're like, oh, you're good. But they're not going to actually diagnose what you truly need. And of course, not everyone is working with harm or ill intent. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying people are actively just like, I don't know, if you die, you die.
Most doctors have the best of intentions.
Yeah. Yes. But it's like, when you're looking at those things, I think it's very easy to be like, take this medicine and here it is. And it's just kind of a one-track mind sort of thing of like, it's not going to be looking into ulterior ways of healing or the long-term thing that can get you to the goal you're looking for. It's always just like the instant thing. And I'm so sorry if this is random, but like that, like hearing all that, I was like, the same thing happens in the business world, where there's so many people that I have seen or experienced or heard about or whatever that kind of like misdiagnose or commit that quote unquote like malpractice sort of thing, where, a client comes to them and they're like, hey, I would love to hire you for whatever, this commercial. They're not really finding the authentic thing that client needs. And okay, what do you need? You say commercial, but what does that mean? Mm-hmm. How do we tell the story of your brand? How do we show who you are authentically to what you do? They just sort of like do the run of the mill, just like, cool. A commercial is X amount. It doesn't matter whether it's more work or less work. It's X amount, and we're just going to, I don't know, like, are we lying on purpose? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's just sort of like, here's the thing.
Right.
Here's the diagnosis. Here's whatever it is. We're done. Go out the door, pay me, and I'll see you later.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's such similarities there. Mm-hmm. And again, hearing you explain those sort of things, I'm like, yeah, that's like such the same thing of like a business talking to client A, B, C, whatever. It's like they're going to tell A, B, and C clients the exact same thing, just so they can get that like, oh, we've got 3 clients.
Right.
Are you doing something that authentically fits for those 3 clients? It the exact same. I mean, in a way worse way than just giving someone a commercial. If you had 3 clients, patients, you know, who came to you with different health issues, and you just gave them the run-of-the-mill, like, step A, B, C, you know, thing of like, yeah, do this, and there's some health benefits to them, you know, I don't know, try it out.
Yeah, that
like,
would make sense.
Yeah, you've got to find out what authentically works for that person.
Right.
And I think, again, that's as much as I love talking about that in the business world of like, hey, if you're going to hire somebody, understand what you need them for, understand what you're looking for, have that clarity. I mean, it's huge in that way, in health and mental health.
Oh, 100%. And I love that you bring up like the similarities there, because what I'm hearing from, like, because I don't really know anything about your industry at all. So I apologize for my ignorance. But
no, I mean, I just had to go through a whole podcast just being like, tell me things, Hanisha. I'm just going to guess. I don't know.
Yeah, but what it sounds like is happening with a lot of these people is like you're losing that creativity and that art, the art form that comes with it. And that's how I feel with medicine too. Medicine is the beautiful blend of art and science. And when we take away the individualization of it, we're taking away the art of it. And I'm like an artistic, like I said, I'm like a jack of all trades. Like, I love creating that wellness plan, or even like creating the content or whatever it is, like doing something where I'm combining both of these beautiful modalities of science and art and putting them together to create just like this beautiful conjunction of, I don't know, just product. I don't know how to put it, but like, I don't know.
I love the way you put it, honestly. That is so, okay. I don't know if there's many ways we can top that, to be honest, because I love that explanation. So, okay, we just talked about so much, and I am so appreciative of everything that you just shared. Like, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anything you feel like we didn't touch on that you're like, hey, here's a major point that we're kind of leaving out that we need to cover? Or even a major point of your story? Like, is there, you know what I mean? Is there anything that you're like, hey, we just sort of jumped through stuff, but this huge thing happened here? Like, anything you feel like that we're missing out on?
I don't think so. I think we went over a lot. I do want to recommend one book, though, since we were talking a lot about mental health and gut health. And there is this book, Dr. Uma Naidu is her name, the author, and it's Your Brain on Food. And so she goes into a lot more details on the specific foods, or even spices. She talks about turmeric and saffron and how like those are great spices to help support your mental health, support depression. So yeah, those are just a few of the examples, but I do want to like mention that book because I think it was a very powerful book and exactly along those lines of what you were talking about.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so final thing. So I end every episode the same way, by just dropping one last big question for every guest, okay? So you can answer this as simple as you would like. You can get as deep as you want, whatever it is. Or you can be like, that's a stupid question. Don't ever ask that. I'm not answering. Whatever you want. Choice is yours. So right now, I want you to pretend that everyone everywhere in the world is listening to you right now. They are on the other end of that microphone. They can hear everything that you're saying. It doesn't matter where they're from, language barriers, anything like that. Toss it all aside. They can hear what you are saying. You have a live mic connected to everyone in the world. What are you sharing with them, or what are you telling them?
I love this question. I think that it would be what I talked about in terms of the mindset and being very mindful of the words and of the words that you speak and think to yourself, and recognizing that as the first step of your healing process. And I would say that you do have the power to change your health and optimize your health so that you can actually feel freaking fantastic. You can feel mahan or great. And you can do that. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they're wrong, because you can get there. And so yeah, that's what I would say.
That was wonderful. Hanisha, thank you so much. Thank you so freaking much.
This was so fun.
So before we officially tell everybody goodbye,
yeah,
if they want to find you around the internet, find your practice, maybe look up what you do, look up those TikTok videos we talked about, where do you want to send people on the internet to find more about you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm on all the socials, so Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. I'm on all the things, and my name is Holistic Hanisha, and so I think you'll have that information. Or?
Yep, it'll all be. People can see it in the descriptions and the tags.
So
it's
and all Holistic that. Hanisha, and for all of those. And my practice is called Mahan Health. I also have some social pages for that as well that you can follow. And like I said earlier, Mahan literally translates to great or the absolute best in Sanskrit. And to me, that's the only thing that makes sense when it comes to your health. And that's why I started my practice. So you can check out more of my practice. Also, my podcast. I have my own podcast where I interview.
That's one thing we didn't talk about. Oh my goodness. Yes, 100% tell them about the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. It's also called Mahan Health. That's MAHAN. And that's where I interview a number of different naturopathic doctors or functional medicine doctors in this field in different areas. So we'll talk about anything from gut health and how that affects your mental health. I have a whole episode on that. So if you're interested in checking that out, definitely do that. We'll be talking about like stem cell therapy, so like all like the modern, like more natural medicines, but then also like going back into like, all right, what's Ayurvedic medicine? So we kind of cover all of those things, which is fun. And I'll do some solo episodes, but I have a lot of amazing guests on there, colleagues that I absolutely admire and love. And so that's another place where you can check out and get more information. My website also has, I do a blog post at least every month, and I send out a newsletter once a month too. And so you can get a lot of great information for free, like all of it's out there. And then if you would like to dig a little bit deeper and dive deeper into your health and would like some additional support, then I would love to support you. And if I'm not the right fit, then I would love to guide you towards someone who might be. And so I think that's like one of the most important things in medicine is taking out that ego, kind of probably with everything really, but taking out that ego of like, oh, like I might not be the right fit for you. And that's okay. And so I'm very passionate about that too, but that's why I do like a free 15-minute phone call and we can talk about things. And then if you feel like I would be a good fit, then we can go ahead and get started on your health journey.
I love it. Thank you so much. That was easily one of my favorite episodes. Maybe the best one ever.
Oh.
That was maybe my favorite one.
You're too kind.
Because I went into this, literally I said it at the top of the show, I'm super excited, but I'm pretty nervous because I'm just diving into a world that I just need to learn so much about. But I literally feel like I genuinely did learn so freaking much. So
hopefully it was a good overwhelm.
Yes, no, it was. It was. It absolutely was. I am so stoked and so thankful that you were down to do this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It's been super fun.
All right, I hope you guys liked it. I have to say that is probably a new favorite episode of mine. I went in nervous and came out having learned so much, honestly, about not only Hanisha, but the health world in general. So this is definitely one of my favorite conversations to date for sure. So I hope you guys got something from it. Of course, as we wrap up, if you did get something from it or enjoyed it in any way, I would love for you to let us know, or more generally, just maybe let the internet know. Tell people about us, share the conversation around if you want, tag us, tag me, tag Hanisha, or just DM us or something and let us know you liked it, or whatever you want to do. Just I want to know if you enjoyed the episode. An extra step you could take, if you want to take one, would be to hop over to iTunes, leave a rating and a review. It helps the show more than you may know. But all in all, thank you so much for just listening to another episode. I had a blast doing this one, and I'll be back having another blast of a conversation with a story you've never heard before. But this next one is with someone listeners of the show, at least, are probably pretty familiar with at this point. The next guest is yours truly, and we'll be taking a bit of a deeper dive into my life, probably deeper than I ever have before, and I don't know how I feel about it yet, to be honest. But until then, thanks for listening to this one, thanks for looking, and I must bid you adieu for now. Good night, see you in episode 28, and goodbye.